Hello, my name is Fasih, and I'm a fiscal analyst at the Scottish Fiscal Commission. I'm part of the public funding and the fiscal sustainability team. Because of the work we do in our team, we know that the Scottish budget and the way it is funded are complicated. This clip is one of a series of videos explainers which aim to explain how the Scottish budget works, broken down into bite-sized chunks. This is the fifth and the last clip of our series on the Scottish budget. In previous ones, we have explained what the Scottish budget is. We have looked at its spending and tax plans. We have spoken about how devolved social security works. Finally, we covered how the Scottish budget is funded more broadly and how that has changed over time. In this clip, we will look at the life cycle of a budget. We will show what happens in the run-up of a budget being set and how it changes during the year. We will also see what happens once the financial year has ended. As mentioned, there are other clips covering what the budget is, the spending and tax plans it contains, how it is funded, and how devolved social security works. You can find these other videos on the video explainer section of our website. First, I'll take you through the process before the financial year from budget inception until it becomes a law and starts being implemented. This is the ideal budget process, with the budget presented around December before the financial year in question. But sometimes this calendar is affected by major events like elections or global pandemics, and so it can shift. Here at the Scottish Fiscal Commission, we tell the Scottish Government how much we think it will get from devolved taxes. We also tell the government how much we think it will need to set aside to pay for the devolved social security benefits. Our forecasts are independent of any politics, so the convention is that the government will use them to set the budget. We need about 10 weeks notice to produce these forecasts. We will follow the budget through its life cycle through a red dot that has come up now on the screen. As you can see, the government announces the budget date 10 weeks in advance and we start forecasting. How this all works is set out in our protocol of engagement, which is on our website. Even before how much funding is available will be clear, the Scottish Government has to start making decisions on spending priorities. Scottish Parliament committees take evidence on what spending pressures there are in their areas, and in a normal budget calendar, by October, most committees will have sent pre-budget reports to the Scottish Government regarding spending pressures and priorities they want addressed in the budget. This is a big internal process where the Finance Secretary and the Cabinet weigh up all the competing bids. Then by November, we have the UK fiscal event, which can either be budget or statement. Budgets normally include more measures, but both the events set spending and tax plans for the year ahead. These also confirm block grant funding for the year ahead. At the same time, our counterparts for the UK government, the Office for Budget Responsibility, publishes fiscal forecasts for the UK. The Scottish and the UK government use these to update the block grant adjustments. The current UK government has expressed an intention to move towards one single event with fiscal measures each year. When the Scottish Government presents its budget to the Parliament, setting out tax and spending plans, it also introduces budget bill for it, and it also lodges a motion known as Scottish Rate Resolution. It is the way to give legal basis to the tax bands and rates of income tax for the budget year ahead. The Scottish Rate Resolution is voted on shortly after presenting the budget. At the same time, we publish our report, the Scottish Economic and Fiscal Forecasts. The budget bill has a lengthy process through Parliament before it becomes a law. Changes to the budget during this process, including but not limited to extra spending paid from new funding, is common when there is a minority government. This is because the budget bill needs the vote of another party to be passed. If there is no Budget Scotland Act before the start of the financial year, spending is capped to the last year's level. This can have consequences for public services, because in a world where prices rise over time, being limited to what you spent last year means cuts in real terms. Once the financial year the budget relates to has begun, we publish our second report alongside the Scottish Government's medium-term financial strategy, usually in May. In it, we talk about how discretionary funding is changing since the Scottish Government set the budget. Once the plans in the budget bill becomes law and the financial year starts, Scottish Government plans and priorities could change over time, and the government would want to revise the budget accordingly to reflect these changes. The Scottish Government amends the budget at budget revisions. Changes can be neutral, where the overall amount of funding stays the same, but how it is spent across or within the portfolios is changed. Or the changes could be adding or removing funding, and therefore change the overall level of spending altogether. Usually, there is an autumn and a spring budget revision, as you can see on the screen, though they can be more frequent. An example was during COVID-19 pandemic, where an unexpected new spending from the UK government led to a lot of funding for the Scottish government. So much so that in 2020-2021, the Scottish government introduced a summer budget revision only 2 months into the financial year. This way, it could more quickly start spending the extraordinary consequentials for its public health response to the pandemic. In between budget revisions, there is a new budget presented to the Parliament for the next year along with a new report from us. The budget for year 2 is presented as a green dot on the screen. Budgets for different financial years overlap over their life cycle, as you can see on the screen. In February, the budget for year 1 is amended at the spring budget revision. There could be many factors that can lead to budget needing amendment, both on the funding and on the spending sides, and all of these can either go up or down. Changes to the block grant during the year happen when the UK government changes its spending on the devolved areas, and these can be either positive or negative. For example, in 2020-2021, due to the UK government's COVID-19 response, by July there were 6.5 billion more block grant funding than had been expected. In 2010-2011, the UK government brought in cuts to spending plans halfway through the year as part of the 2010 spending review. Forecasting is never perfect, so what happens when a tax raises a different amount to what had been forecasted? For land and buildings transaction tax, or landfill tax, the Scottish Government handles that as part of its budget management process. If the tax raised less than we had forecast, the Scottish Government can borrow to ease the funding pressure. Most block grant adjustments are revised halfway through the year. These revisions use more recent Office for Budget Responsibility forecasts in autumn during the financial year and will account for any policy changes the UK government has decided to make in year. Income tax is the exception. It is managed differently. The Scottish government can change how it plans to use the Scotland Reserve. How much money there is in it changes constantly as underspends from previous year become clearer. Therefore, the Scottish Government may increase or decrease how much it plans to use from the reserve depending on what's going on. Borrowing plans can also change during the year. For resource, more borrowing may be available as unfavorable forecast error emerges. For capital, more or less may be borrowed as projects plan changes. Social Security spending is based on our forecasts. During the year, we will revise them. If we underestimated the cost, the Scottish Government can borrow to help manage this pressure. There may be spending pressures in other areas. For example, pay deals agreed during the year may result in staffing costs that are higher than what had been budgeted for. After the financial year the budget relates to has ended, there are still a few more steps in the life cycle of a budget. The outturned data for devolved taxes and Social Security is made available by delivery agencies, and we use those to publish forecast evaluation report, where we measure how much of an error we made on the forecast. We also try to understand what caused the errors, and finally, we draw lessons so that we can improve our forecast moving forward. In September, the Scottish Government publishes the Fiscal Framework Outturn Report, in which it reports the final funding positions for tax, Social Security, and borrowing. After the Fiscal Framework Outturn Report is published, there is yet another budget starting its life cycle. You can follow that by the yellow dot on the screen. So up to 3 budgets for 3 different years overlap at the same time. In December, the consolidated accounts are published, which confirm how close the spending levels were to the amounts budgeted. Normally, it's quite close, but slightly less than budgeted for, because the Scottish Government aims for a balanced budget. It is then that the size of underspends is confirmed and the balance available in Scotland Reserve for use in later years. When the final accounts for year 1 are published, we are halfway through the year 2 budget and the budget for year 3 is presented to the Parliament. The life cycle of a Scottish budget is very long, around 26 months from inception to the final audited accounts. We'll walk through what we have covered so far in this clip. The process to a Scottish budget normally starts in autumn. Scottish Government and the Scottish Fiscal Commission work together in this process. The Scottish Government gets a budget made law before the financial year begins. During the year, it amends the budget, normally twice, because many things can change on funding or spending, which could either go up or down. Budgets for different years overlap during their life cycle. At one point, the final accounts for a budget are still to be published, another one is halfway through its financial year, and a third is being prepared for the following financial year. This is all for this clip, and for our whole series on the Scottish budget. We hope you have found it useful. If you are interested in knowing more, you can find more videos in the video explainer section of our website. And if you have any feedback or questions on the slides or any other matter, please get in touch. Our email address is in the slide and in the description of the video.